All the Young Dudes, Sirius's Perspective by ROLLERCOASTERWORDS. Chapter 10, First Year, History. Saturday the 23rd of October, 1971. For the next week, Remus didn't avoid him exactly, not as he had done before, but he made sure that Sirius never caught him alone, always careful to remain in the presence of their fellow marauders, or choosing to spend time in the crowded common room. Of course, he also continued to dart off on his own, and Sirius attempted a few times to catch him leaving. Lupin was just too slippery. So it wasn't until the next weekend that Sirius finally caught him, alone in their room, flicking through one of James's Quidditch magazines. Which was odd, as Remus had already made it clear that he had zero interest in the sport, no matter how the other boys tried to explain to him that it was one of life's greatest joys. Sirius had found that direct questions seemed to work best with Remus, so he trotted over to the bed. He said bluntly, "Did you just never get taught?" Remus waited for a moment to respond, pointedly turning the page and acting as if he was entirely absorbed in the article about this month's newest models. "I got taught." Sirius continued to stand stubbornly at the end of the bed. The article was outdated anyway, and not very interesting, even if you could read. Finally, Remus released a resigned sigh and closed the magazine. "I got taught," he repeated. Just didn't learn properly. When I look at the words, I don't think I see what everyone else sees. It doesn't make any sense. All the words keep jumping around and changing. Teachers said I was just thick." Sirius blinked, studying him. He had never considered that two people might just look at something and see two entirely different things. He stared into Remus's eyes, wondering what it was about them that was wired differently. "But how have you been doing it?" he insisted, waiting expectantly for an answer. Of course, Sirius had suspected for a few weeks, but to be honest, the confirmation that Remus couldn't read had still been quite a shock. He was so clearly brilliant with the way he mastered spells. Sirius had half thought that he was just too much of a rebel to bother with homework. Remus seemed baffled by the question. "Doing what?" "Well, everything! All your work here at Hogwarts." Now Remus was looking at him as if he was thick. "Sirius, I haven't been doing it. In case you haven't noticed, I'm in detention every night." Ugh, he was impossible. "Well, yeah, obviously." Sirius waved a hand dismissively. But the other day in potions, I saw you. You didn't take notes. You didn't even look at the book or the blackboard. And you still prepared all the ingredients for the cure for the boils perfectly. Slughorn gave you 5 points." Remus flushed and shook his head. "Oh, that was easy. Sluggy told us how to do it in the lesson before. I just remembered." "Bloody hell! You must have a brilliant memory then." Remus just shrugged, looking at the world like he didn't understand what was so impressive about brewing potions perfectly without any practice, after being told one time an entire week ago how to do it. If you could read, you'd be just as good as me and James. Better, probably," Sirius mused. Remus snorted. "So modest, Black." "Well, you would," Sirius reiterated, distracted. Your wand work is much more natural, and if your memory is as good as you say it is." He lost himself for a moment in thought. "I bet there's a spell for it." Remus huffed out a laugh, as if the idea was ridiculous. "You're going to cure me with a spell?" "Why not?" Sirius stuck his lip out, slightly offended by the disbelief in Remus's tone, but the other boy just simply said, "Magic can't fix stuff like that. Why else does James wear glasses?" "I think there are spells for eyesight," Sirius countered. "Maybe they're just not worth the effort, or too dangerous, or complicated, or something." "It's not just the reading," Remus insisted. "My writing's crap too. too slow and it comes out all messy. There are definitely spells for that, Sirius assured him. You can bewitch your quill. I've seen my father do it on official documents. His handwriting's really scratchy normally. Remus stared at him as if he were mad. Why are you so interested in anyway? Sirius pointedly ignored the darkest corner of his mind, the part he was squashing down everything. The part where he was squashing down everything that he was trying not to think about, and focused instead on the boy in front of him. You're my fellow marauder. Can't have you in detentions every day. What are the Slytherins strike back? We need your evil mind for pranks. This gave him an idea, and he continued. Speaking of, I'm assuming you haven't done your history homework yet? Nope. Okay then, let's get started. Sirius jumped off the bed and began rooting around in his trunk. Remus protested immediately, standing up and folding his arms with a frown as he said, No, you're not doing my homework for me. Too bloody right I'm not. Sirius refrained from rolling his eyes as he pulled out a history of magic. Just fancied refreshing my memory, that's all. So, I'm going to sit here and read it aloud, because it helps me study. And if you happen to remain some of it in that enormous brain of yours, then there's not much I can do about it. Remus' frown deepened, and he said sullenly, Haven't you got something better to do? Where's James, anyway? Watching the Gryffindor Quidditch practice, Sirius shot back, settling down on the bed and opening the book. Reckons he'll be on the team next year, so he's trying to pick up some tips. Peter followed him, obviously. Now, be quiet, please. I'm trying to work. He cleared his throat. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Chapter 1, Ancient Egypt. The Rites and Rituals of... For a few moments, Remus hovered in the middle of the room, arms still crossed. He looked as if he was trying to decide whether to storm off or not. But eventually, he seemed to give in, slouching over to the bed and sitting down with a scowl. A bit more time passed, and the scowl disappeared. He relaxed, leaning back onto his arms, weariness bleeding from his features as he listened. Surprisingly, he actually seemed quite interested. Sirius thought the text was somewhat dry, but then most of it was covered by the things he'd already learned from his parents growing up. For Lupin, Sirius supposed, it was all brand new. Eventually, Remus lay back, arms behind his head, closing his eyes. When Sirius glanced up at him, there was a small, unconscious smile on his face. Sirius turned back to the book and realized he was smiling too. He made it halfway through chapter 5 before his voice began to give out completely, and he had to close the book. Evening had fallen, bleeding deep blue and orange into the sky outside, and the room around them seemed to alight with the glow of the setting sun. I don't think I can study any more today, Sirius croaked. Remus's eyes snapped open, and he sat up quickly, blinking. It's okay, he said quietly. It's dinner now. I'm starving. They stood, stretched, and started downstairs. At the Gryffindor table, James and Peter were already waiting in their usual seats. Sirius strained a goblet of pumpkin juice, which soothed the worst of the scratchiness in his throat, before asking, How's practice? Cracking, James said enthusiastically, beaming as he speared a sausage with his fork. How come you two didn't come? Homework, Sirius replied casually, catching Remus's eye and smiling a small, private smile. James entertained them throughout dinner with a detailed account of the Quidditch practice, including the names of every member, their positions, their techniques, their weaknesses, even some of their birthdays. Peter piped up occasionally, usually just to remind everyone that he agreed with what James was saying, but Sirius was in such a good mood that it hardly irritated him tonight. Pudding was a disappointment, millionaire shortbread, which neither he nor James liked. Remus and Peter both acted like they were mad, scarfing down the lot. In fact, when Remus saw that Peter had already eaten both the boys' plates, he shot him a bit of a dirty look. I've got some sweets, Peter said nervously, as if realizing the mistake he had made in coming between Remus and food. He dug in his pockets of his robes, pulling out a bulging brown bag. "Mum sent them. Help yourself." "Cheers, Pete," James said happily, and the rest of them wasted no time tearing into the surprisingly wide selection of candies. They didn't slow until they demolished about half the bag, and they all looked a bit queasy. "What homework were you doing?" James asked, scratching his chin absent-mindedly. "I thought we'd finished everything for this week." Seeing James scratch made his own skin feel prickly, and Sirius itched his collarbone as he said, "Yeah, I was a bit behind on history. Had to go back and check something." Next to him, Remus was starting to scratch too. Sirius didn't think of anything of it, more focused on James, who was asking, "Oh really? Did we miss something then?" This was the drawback of doing everything together, Sirius realized. If he wanted to keep Remus's secret, he needed to formulate some better excuses, or just stop doing all his homework with James. Suddenly, Remus leapt to his seat. Sirius jerked around to look at him. His eyes were wide with horror. His face had gone white. He was staring down at his own hands. "What's up, Lupin?" James asked, startled. Remus looked up at them, breathing hard, naked terror in his expression. Sirius realized that dark hair was sprouting from the back of Remus's hands, where he had been scratching. "Oh, bollocks." Sirius looked down at his collarbone. Sure enough, the same dark hair was sprouting from his face, his hands, his arms. It grew from every bit of exposed skin. Oh, bloody hell. Across from him, James was experiencing the same conundrum. "What's going on?" "Isn't it obvious?" Sirius thought, glaring at the bag of sweets that was still sitting innocently on the table. "Peter," he growled, already knowing the answer to his question, "are you sure your mum sent you those sweets?" The only one among them that hadn't eaten any of the candy, Peter spluttered, turning bright red, and squeaked out, "Well, I mean, I thought they were from her. They arrived this morning." "Peter!" James roared. People were starting to turn to stare at them now, whispering and laughing. Pretty soon the entire hall was craning their necks for a look at the three furry first-years. The loudest laughter was coming from the Slytherin table, where Severus Snape looked close to hysterics. "Come on," Sirius stood up, squaring his shoulders and attempting to maintain some of the shred of dignity. "Let's go to the hospital wing. We can plot our revenge later." Although he could certainly see the humour in the prank, he hated the self-satisfied smirk that Severus shot him as they left. He hated that he let Slytherin get one over on him. Down the table from Snape, Bellatrix and Narcissa was staring at Sirius disdainfully, which made him want to cringe. He had no doubt that his parents would be finding out about this, one way or another, though he doubted his cousins would be so eager to share the news about the case of the itching boys in the Hogwarts house. As they exited into the hall, Sirius muttered darkly, "Told you they'd strike back." He thought of his cousins smirking in their green robes and gritted his teeth, determined to return the favour. Not just to Snape, but every Slytherin that thought they were better than him. Although he attempted to laugh and joke with James, whose answer to most of his problems in life was a good sense of humour, the hot string of shame curled in Sirius's belly long after Madame Pomfrey had set them back to normal.